now we're ready to actually start putting our components in our dashboard. So I'm going to be using the old dashboard Kamada. And one of the things I've done is instead of having it be Kamada in here, I made it to be images. Now that's because in our folder we have, this is images. So in the previous one, when testing, I would have it as Kamada. So images, whatever you want to have it as your images folder for imports. Now, I have to make sure it's uppercase screen.qml, nothing else. Otherwise, our test suite won't actually see it. So let's go back to the GAWR display. So I have my preview here updated, and let's look at the actual screen. So I'm going to hit the ignition. So we'll hit reload. I've got all these issues here. Can't open file, can't open file. This nice logging is really helpful if you've named something wrong or if you've done something that makes the QML render improper. So it says I don't have the fonts. I don't have anything going on here. So we can work on that later. But anyways, let's start. So if I hit ignition, everything sort of fades in, not very well, but you can see kind of the start of how things are working. So let's turn this back off again, and then we can hit reload, and there we go. So let's look into our dashboard. So I still have this here. All this information I have commented here. So this is our information that we're getting from our dashboard itself. So we have ignition, battery, joystick inputs, indicator, left indicator, seatbelt light, shift IDs, odometer, some comments there, fuel, all these values. Now, we leave all these values alone for the most part. Right here is mostly colors that I have put in here. So you don't actually have to have this, but I liked having these as sort of like, if I go back into my document, I could have like set here. I have this yellow here, and I can see exactly what yellow it is here. So that is like FF00. So let's put that in as our main color. So primary color is going to be FF00 or quadruple F00. And we can just do strong yellow. Just as a note, if we're going to be, we can use that as our, when we're actually putting the fonts in. So we go peak values, font loaders, we're going to be taking off at some point. We're actually using this font here. This is my font I designed a while back. I called it Boosted Regular. Up here you can see it says Boosted. And what we can do with that is go back in our folders. I have my fonts here. And you can see Boosted Regular. So let's copy this. Control C. I'm using this as my old folder here as like just let's make a new folder. Fonts. Boosted Regular. Now that's it loaded in there. So if we go back into our IC7 and we go right here and we look at our right here, ignition, you can see right here the 32, that's our old font. The Boosted Regular has loaded properly. 01 loaded properly. Our odometer looks good. Sweet. So let's go back to our document here. Let's turn our mileage back on. And that is what? That is digital 7 mono italic, 24 points. So let's make sure that font is set up properly. Let's go to old. Let's go to fonts. And let's copy and paste those. So, and then fonts. So a digital 7 mono, digital 7 mono italic. So this is mono italic. So let's make sure we'll go back to our document and we want to load and let's make sure the names match up. So let's go back here, copy that name and paste. All right, and then I'm saving this. Place, we want to keep it uppercase just to match. And that looks good. So I have some utility classes here for peak values. We'll keep those for now. Utility stuff. We have like convert things to Fahrenheit, get the peak speeds, get the temperature, all these kind of things. Make sure our temp colors are right. We have a timer running for our peak check. So every 2 microseconds, we're checking the peaks, which is up here. So every 2 microseconds, we're saying if we're going to update, do this quick check and check our RPM, speed, water temp, oil temp, and then check if it's moving or not. So main layout items. Now we're finally into the real stuff. So let's start getting into here. So we have this thing called tach speed background. So right now we can go into this and let's go in source images. We can turn our height and width off because we're going to use absolute side. So what was our images names? So let's go into images and then we have tach background. So tach backgrounds, I'm using the same terminology and let's just call it tach backgrounds. We have a z-index of 2. This is important later. So let's go look at our document again. So let's bring this back. Let's reload. Hey, look at that. We have our little background. So it's not bad. And also you can see our yellow primary color has gone in. So that's a good start. As you can see, I have this bar set up for it, but we're getting in places. So let's move this thing back to the center. So let's open up our document. Look at our right here. So what's our X position? So this is where things get kind of fun or not so fun. So 190 and it's 30 pixels down. So X 190, Y 30. So let's go back into here. Y 30. Let's save, Control S, and bring this back. Hey, look at that. It's right in the center. So we don't need this information background. We can keep their shift light somewhere at some point, but So this is where our unlit stuff sits. So we have our indicators. We don't need our height and width on this. And as you can see, we're at Z index 3, which is above our main tach background. We don't need a background image also. Let's shed that. So we have our tach background, and then we have our shift lights here. So what I'm doing is I'm keeping this based all upon if we have our side lights on. So if I turn on my parking lights, I put on my main beams, we're actually going to have the color temperature of our markers change. So let's go back into, we'll set this to images, this also images. So if they are not on, we want the unlit. So I'll go back to our folder, tach markers lit or unlit. This is where naming things properly also helps. So let's save that. Bring up our thing. Hey, look at that. So, and then if we hit side lights, the color temperature changes. Exact same position, exact same kind of idea going on here. So let's recenter that. Let's go look at our document again. And let's look at our numbers and lines. So that is 209.5 by 49. So 209.5 and 49. We might have to tweak this as we go along, but that's looking pretty good. So side light, there we go. So we can start adding the needle on here. So let's do images, tach needle, turn this off. So now we have our RPM meter. So right now, that doesn't really quite work. So I'm going to turn off our drop shadow on here because we have another item here. So we can actually add our needle center here. Let's add that. Tach center. We can keep the name as needle center. Gotta remember images. Might have to bring this. There we go. So let's go back into our document. 380, 220. There we go. So we have our center in there. Let's get our needle position here. So now we're going to start getting into the rotation items. So let's reload this. Is our Z index enough? Let's check again. As you can see, our needle center is way off. So that's fine. So origin X, origin Y. So right here, we go look at this. We're basically going, the origin of our needle here is where we're going to rotate, where exactly are we going to rotate around? So right here, it's per the item that we actually have. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to zoom in. So we have, this is 6 pixels high. We can do 3, and then we can look at how wide this is. And is this right in the center? So let's open up our guides again. It's right on our entire width. So right now I have this if statement. So these angles right here. So let's delete that. So let's just, know what I can do is I can just comment all this out. So control slash. So let's do angle. So right here I have like a rounding thing. So if I just do like RPM divided by 1,000, since we're mostly keeping this, we can do keep this in its own place. So let's go right here. And as we can see, the center is off. So that's getting closer. So let's sort of subtract some. And our center still isn't quite in the right place. So let's go. Actually, I believe we can just have it right in the center. So that looks pretty good. But the problem is we're still a little off, so I need to push this in a little bit more. There we go. So how are we looking now? Maybe a little off. This is something you have to play with. That looks pretty good to me. But since we're going all the way around here. So let's subtract. So we have 90 minus whatever we have here. We want to have this as minus 90. So we can go back down to 0. We're going to edit our speed text area here. We have our position at 173. And this is where we're going to pull our information again. And one of the things I'm going to do here is I'm going to edit it to be all three numbers here. So I have a good width. Well, no, and then our Y is 384. Let's see how that turns out. Not quite where we want it to be. That's because our height's different. So how wide are we? We are 153.6, height of 48. And what's our font size on that? It is window character. That is 48 pixels high. All right, so actually it's 446, not in 360. My bad. It's on center 440. All right, that's looking good. So if we have our speed, looks like we need to increase the height to about 50. Maybe even more. You're going to be doing this a lot. It's just alt tabbing. So there we go. 186. 186. So that's looking good. If we have our side light on, that's fine. That's not changing. See how it looks compared to this. Looks good. And then one of the things you can do is here is up, and then you scroll through our left and right. So speed units up 300. So we actually might want to actually make this a little wider. So because R2 is kind of cropped off there. So let's make this, I like making things a little bit more of a round number. Let's do up again. Then left, right. up, get back down to 2. Might even need more, so let's push this up. One of the things with working with fonts is that you have to really like just gently massage things. So that's, we could go probably another, let's make it 360, 160, just to even it out. That looks good. Nice and monospaced. We have an easy code right here that already takes care of our speed units. So we still have that animation. We'll figure out if we want to keep that or not. But as of right now, our speed. So let's do the speed label and our mileage. So this is our speed label area. We have image, ID, speed label. So let's go change this to images. Images. And then let's go back into our folder, images, MI marker, KM marker. So marker, marker. Let's make sure they're loading right. There we go. So let's put this in its actual place. So that we go back to here. We look at this, and we're at 540. And 42.6. 426, I should say. Saved. Reload. Look at that. Nice crisp line there if we look at it. And we can, now we can actually put our mileage in. So where's our mileage number? Our odometer. So we got our odometer here. Do we have our odometer here? Yep, we got it right there. So let's cancel this out and let's put in our actual text on here just for position's sake so we can have a text. So I like using these numbers. And then we're not using the boosted font, we are using that digital font. So when we're selecting fonts, we use Digital 7 Mono Italic. It'll actually .name, what size was it? It was 24 pixels. Text align right, because we don't want it to be bouncing around at all. Let's reload. Do we have it? It's in the wrong position as usual, but it's looking close. So this is a timer for the animation in. So, but we can take care of that later. So let's get the position right. So what's our X position? 466. And then our Y is 428. We could leave the Z there, that's fine. Obviously it's 0 because we run an animate mileage, which is right here. And we can actually change that to like half a second. it's unfortunately because we have it 500 for, that should be, let's try this again. So that's 466.7, 467. 467. I actually, it's the width issue, so let's get rid of the width. Actually, we can make that, we actually have the width set to be 67.3. And you can see it's a little too low there. So do we have a height? Or we can actually just reduce that by 5. Maybe add another pixel there. That's not quite 1 pixel down. There we go. That looks good. Looks good to me. So once we actually are ready to actually save this, we can uncomment this and then comment, basically delete this out. So we got a timer there. This is also the delay before you actually fire it off. So 1.5 seconds, then it only runs when the ignition's on. It doesn't repeat. And then once it's triggered on that interval, then we fire off the sequential animation of animate mileage. Number animation, because it's from 0 to 1. Using the property opacity. Target is mileage. Duration is half a second. So cool. That's our basics of creating a decent dashboard. I'll get into things like we'll get into things like these gauges over here, or the gas gauge, or possibly the alert things in a little bit. One of the things I did do with this project when I exported this was put this drop shadow, or bevel edge, I should say, on the edges. So we have to actually crop this. So I'm just using a copy of Photoshop. We can go into canvas size. See how it's 824. Let's change that to 800. And then 480. Keep it centered. Clipping's fine. All right, now we have our outline, or basically our main mask. So let's put that on our project. So let's go into Visual Studio Code. I have our screen hooked up here. And one of the things I like to do is I can put that on top here. So let's do image ID silver, not silver, silver mask overlay, and then we do x0 want. So one of the things you can also do, if you notice right here, is if you put a semicolon, you can keep things on the same line, which is helpful. It just makes it look better. And then we can do source images, and what was that name? Melt fire mask. Melt fire mask.png. And let's also make sure that the z index on this, so make it 10, because we want it to be basically on top of things. Now, when we put our gas gauge on top of that, we're going to have to put that on top on a z-index, and I'll do a little explanation on what z-index means in a little bit. But I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to bring over to our designer, and I'm going to hit reload, and there we go. If you notice, I also have this one vertical line here. This is just a centering thing. I did, if you look on my right here, it helps actually to have something like this right here to make sure that when you're working with the project that things are uncentered. So I mean, I'm gonna put another guideline here. So what I do is I do Z999 height. So let's do 800 with 1, and then X we'll have it at 0, and then Y we'll have it at so half of that is 240. And we want to have a color there, so our 00FF00. Let's reload. And there you go. My bad. So this gives us like a nice, that actually sort of matches how we have our guides here a little bit. Just kind of makes it so you can actually see what's going on here. So we have our guides lines on our project, and our tach is still working. I also put the drop shadow in, which gives us this little little bit of definition under here. If you can see that, I'll zoom in a little bit, but you can see what I did with that. If I go back to my code here, we have our tach needle and then our tach needle drop shadow. So what I did is I made it on the same X, and then I moved it up a little pixels because we have a little bit of a drop shadow on that. So it's going to shift it a little bit. And what I did is on a rotation is that I made it so we have our origin change just a little bit of Y. So we have that little bit of separation. I'll show it to you again. So RPM. So I have not a lot, and then it's sort of the Y goes down. We have a lot there, but when we go up here, we don't have any separation. Basically, when we're basically straight vertical, and then we start getting more separation as we start going to the right. So if we're like this, we don't have much separation, and then it just goes all the way. Most, least, most again, but on the opposite side. It's pretty simple. I'll show it to you in the document, but other than that, it's pretty simple. It's easier. It's easier than making a specific drop shadow in QML, because QML seems to have a problem with that caching. So I found it easier just to create it with another drop shadow layer and just have it spin around. It gives that little bit of extra touch that adds a little clarity when the yellow line is under it. If you can see again, right around here. Like I said, little touches, little kind of things.